A while ago, and I truly mean a while ago, as it was roughly 4 years ago at the time that this video is coming out, I made a video about the bizarre ending to the career of this man right here, running back Clem Daniels. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. However, in short, Daniels said that he was confident upon his release from the Oakland Raiders due to his age and his injury history that a team like the Cincinnati Bengals or the Denver Broncos would be interested in him, as they really had nobody at running back that was any good, and he felt like he could play for those teams immediately. As for what the Broncos and the expansion Bengals did, they did not sign Clem Daniels, leading to a very awkward situation. It's almost like if you got fired from your job at McDonald's and you're not worried because you tell your friends, "Oh, don't worry, because I'm dead confident that Burger King or Taco Bell will hire me." And sure enough, neither of them do. However, as crazy as that moment in the twilight of the career of Clem Daniels was, it wasn't the craziest moment of his career during the calendar year of 1968. Far from it, in fact. Because after the 1967 season, and after his departure from the Oakland Raiders, Daniels was not done, and he signed on to another team. And when he signed on, it led to one of the weirdest and wildest trades in NFL history that I guarantee you've never heard of before. Because imagine a player getting traded, for all intents and purposes, in the middle of a game, and getting traded to the opponent. Seriously. You walk out of the tunnel as a member of the home team, and then, midway through the game, you're on the visiting team, having to switch allegiances and having your friends and your teammates become your foes and your enemies. Well, because of Clem Daniels, that's exactly what happened in 1968, and we're here to break it down today. Because this is the story behind what has to be, considering the circumstances, the strangest and wildest trade in NFL history that you've never heard of before. Make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe, as we're really trying to grow this community. And we post content every single day about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL. And I would really appreciate your support as we try and grow this thing even more. So thanks in advance for liking and subscribing. And with that in mind, let's talk about when trading places goes horribly wrong. Before I talk about the trade in question, who was involved, and just what exactly went down, we need some context to understand the man that was the catalyst for all of this. As in, the man you've been watching this whole time, running back Clem Daniels. And when talking about Daniels, we have to talk about the fact that he might have been the best running back in the history of the American Football League. And I do not say that lightly, as he's a member of the AFL All-1960s team for a reason. The man could play. During his 6 seasons with the Raiders, he made it to 4 straight All-Star games from 1963 to 66, and he led the league during the 1963 season with 1,099 rushing yards. He was a 2-time AP First Team All-Pro, and had 5 consecutive seasons from 1962 to 66, where he had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. He had 15 games where he ran for at least 100 yards, which is only behind Jim Nantz for the most in the history of the AFL. His 53 touchdowns scored ranked 7th all-time in AFL history, and is the second most by any running back in AFL history, only behind the legendary Abner Hayes. His 8,392 yards from scrimmage while playing in the AFL is 3rd in AFL history, and the only 2 players ahead of him in that category are Don Maynard and Lance Allworth, both of whom are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's also the only player in AFL history to have over 5,000 career rushing yards in the league, as he ran for 5,101 yards during his time there. By having over 5,000 rushing yards and 3,000 receiving yards in his career, he became just the 4th player in the history of professional football to do that, joining Ollie Matson, Hugh McElhaney, and Lenny Moore. And if you're wondering, yes, all of those guys are not only in the Hall of Fame, but got inducted into the Hall of Fame more than 50 years ago. What I'm saying is that Clem Daniels might be one of the most underrated running backs of all time, and he absolutely has a Hall of Fame case, even if he's been passed over for years and years. However, by this point in 1968, despite a great career in Oakland, Clem Daniels was a free agent, unemployed with nowhere to play. He was on the older side of things, being on the wrong side of 30, and he was coming off of a leg injury the previous year in 1967 that kept him out for the second half of the season, including Oakland's appearance at Super Bowl II. Despite this, Daniels was adamant that he could still play in pro football for someone, whether it was an AFL team or an NFL team, and he was still extremely confident in his abilities as a runner, which I guess is warranted when you might legitimately be the greatest running back in American Football League history. And the San Francisco 49ers, wanting to bolster their running game and being familiar with Daniels, seeing as he played for Oakland just across the bay, were willing to take a chance on him. The Niners already had a solid backfield that they liked a lot, with the two head backs in there being Ken Willard, the team's first-round pick and the second overall pick from the 1965 NFL Draft, who had made it to 2 Pro Bowls in his first 3 seasons by this point, and would go on to finish his career with roughly 6,000 rushing yards and 4 Pro Bowls with the 49ers, and Gary Lewis, the fifth-year man who led the 49ers in rushing touchdowns during the 1967 season and averaged 5.1 yards per carry while doing so. But new head coach Dick Nolan wanted a little more juice, a little more depth, and a little more experience, especially after being inside the bottom 5 of the league in rushing yards over the first 2 weeks of the new year. So, they decided to take a chance on the man you've been watching and decided to sign Clem Daniels. However, when you add a running back to your roster, presumably, you've got to get rid of another running back. The 49ers wanted to have Daniels ready for their Week 3 game, so they had to make a roster move in order to get him on the team. With that, because the Niners wanted this man right here on the team, the odd man out happened to be their rookie 5th-round pick, Michigan State running back Dwight Lee. Unfortunately, there's no footage of Lee that I could find that isn't insanely grainy and low quality. But after a 1967 season with the Spartans, where he ran for 6 touchdowns, which was the 4th most in the Big Ten, the 49ers decided to draft him with pick number 125 to provide some running back depth. We were 2 weeks into the season, and Lee hadn't done a whole lot, getting 2 carries for 1 yard. And while he showed potential at times in practice, Dick Nolan felt that the man he'd been watching, Clem Daniels, was the better option for his team at this stage. Said Nolan, Clem has more experience than Lee. That's what he wanted. In other words, go with the vet over the rookie. With that, Daniels was on the team, and Lee was off. However, Lee was not released. Instead, the 49ers were able to find a trade partner so they could activate Daniels. And they found their trade partner on Sunday, September 29th, as in literally minutes before their next game. The trade partner? The Atlanta Falcons, who gave up a conditional draft pick in 1970 for Lee, which would only end up materializing if Lee was on the team after the 1968 season, which, spoiler alert, he was not. The Falcons were a team that, in their 3rd year, were struggling in all areas, but especially in the running game. 2 weeks into the season, and not only were they 0-2, but they had the 2nd fewest rushing yards in football, only better than Washington. The Falcons had under 90 yards rushing in each of their first 2 games, which is really bad for that era when teams would run for 100 yards in their sleep. They didn't have their top running back for the 1968 season because Junior Coffey suffered a knee injury. Of the 4 running backs they drafted in 1968, only one of them even made the team. It was a swing and a miss. And they were already coming off of a poor rushing season in 1967, where outside of Coffey, who again was hurt for all of 1968, no one ran for 150 yards, and they had the fewest rushing touchdowns of any team in football. Bottom line, the Falcons needed all the help that they could get at running back. And because the Niners had a runner available because of Clem Daniels, as in the man you've been watching this whole time that was the catalyst for all of this, they were a natural trade partner for Dwight Lee. Alright, so far, nothing too unusual. But now, this is where it gets insane. Because you see, the trade was made just minutes before the 49ers were set to kick off in Week 3 on September 29th. And who were the 49ers playing on September 29th? You guessed it, the freaking Atlanta Falcons in this game right here. When Dwight Lee ran out of the tunnel, he was a member of the home team, the 49ers. By the time the national anthem was played, sure enough, he was now a member of the opposing team. Now, as for the game itself, this game was notable for a few reasons, one of which being that this was the final game ever coached by Norb Hecker, one of the worst coaches in NFL history. As after the Falcons lost this one 28-13, the first ever coach in Falcons history was fired following an 0-3 start to the season and a 4-26-1 overall record. The 49ers dominated this one, winning it by 3 scores, seeing as a 15-point game was 3 possessions back in 1968 in the NFL, since the 2-point conversion only existed in the AFL. Clem Daniels even got to play a little bit because the game was so out of hand. San Francisco outgained Atlanta 374-227 in total yardage, including 189-71 on the ground, which is usually a recipe for success when you're outgaining your opponent by 120 yards in rushing. And seeing as 61 of those rushing yards came from quarterback Randy Johnson, it meant that when the Falcons tried running the ball with actual running backs, as in design runs, they absolutely stunk, attempting 18 carries for 10 yards, averaging about half a yard per carry. You can see why they wanted to get some running back help, because this was just not working out. And for the 49ers, John Brody had one of his best days ever as a pro, as he went 17 for 20 under center, throwing 3 touchdown passes, meaning that he threw as many touchdowns as he did incompletions. It was that kind of day for the 49ers. It started with an opening drive touchdown, and that set the tone for what would be a slaughter. But the other reason that this game was notable, that absolutely insane trade that took place, for all intents and purposes, during the game, where Dwight Lee started this game as a member of the home team and ended it as a member of a visiting team. And if you're thinking, well, that's a bit awkward, oh, don't worry, because it's going to get even more awkward. Because amazingly enough, despite knowing about the trade, Lee was watching the entirety of the game while on the San Francisco bench. Keep in mind that the trade was announced right before the game. Someone had relayed the information to Lee that he was gone. This meant that Lee, who at this point was a Falcon, was on the 49er bench and was either rooting against the team he was about to join or was rooting against the guys he was with on the bench. Why he didn't join the Falcon bench, or why he was even allowed to watch the game on the 49er bench, I have no idea whatsoever, because it truly is a no-win scenario by spending the game on the 49er bench. Either you're going to be rooting against your current team, or rooting against the guys sitting right next to you that you know and that you become friends with. Just an insane situation all the way around. I highly doubt that what happened during this game right here will ever happen in an NFL game ever again. And there's a few reasons for that. Number one, you're not seeing trades made on a Sunday during a game. You're just not. But number two, if a trade is being made and that player is being traded to the opposing team, there is no way that the opposing team is just going to let him sit on the other team's sideline and vice versa. It's a huge conflict of interest, and it doesn't benefit either party. The current team would want him on their sideline so that he could be with his new teammates, absorb the information, and even enter the game if need be. And the previous team wouldn't want him on their sideline because of the conflict of interest, and because if he gets injured at any point during the game, such as a player running into him and knocking him out, the trade becomes null and void. Why have a player on your bench who's not going to play in any situation? Getting traded is one thing, but getting traded to the team you're literally playing right now, something else entirely. Because in 1968, during this game right here, it was a day of change for the Falcons, as not only did they change their head coach, but they changed their running back, quite literally, in the middle of the game. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.